Hello, everyone. They call him the uncrowned king of bodybuilding. He is one of the most beloved athletes among iron training fans. He has never been Mr. Olympia, but he is certainly on the list of the best in history. An athlete who allowed himself to lose shape on vacation from competitions, but then incredibly transformed his muscles in a short time. He seemed to have ended his competitive career more than 20 years ago. But then he came back, just for the fans. Kevin Levrone. I would like to emphasize that this is not a biography of an athlete, and we will not analyze each tournament in detail. Still, 68 professional tournaments as well as amateur performances are an impressive milestone over the years. This issue is about the emotions that Kevin gave in the past and how he remembers himself and his path in bodybuilding. These shots show the U.S. Bodybuilding Championship and the award ceremony. The massive Paul DeMeo takes the gold. He was 24 years old at the time, great form and a bright start. But Paul's career was short-lived. He died at the age of 37 from a drug overdose. Kevin Levrone won silver at that tournament. The audience liked the young, massive athlete, and many reacted with boos to the judge's decision to put Kevin second. And yet Levrone loudly declared himself in '91. It was basically a special nationals tournament. Imagine that lineup. Young Ronnie Coleman, Chris Cormier, Paul DeMeo, Flex Wheeler, and Kevin Levrone are on the same stage. Levrone won that U.S. championship. He received a pro card and immediately took first place in his debut pro tournament at the 1992 German Grand Prix. In the same year, another memorable victory for Kevin was at the Night of Champions tournament. It was then that everyone was finally convinced that Levrone was ready to compete for the Mr. Olympia title in his debut year as a professional. September 12, 1992, Helsinki Olympia Tournament. In the previous 8 years, Lee Haney became the undisputed champion of Olympia, but he ended his career and now the title is vacant. In a time without the internet and social media, none of the athletes knew what their rivals looked like until the tournament itself. The formal favorite was Dorian Yates, who competed with Lee Haney himself a year earlier. Still, the situation was uncertain and the atmosphere behind the scenes was tense. Here's what Kevin himself recalled. Yes, it was a special year and that title was vacant. No one knew who would become the next champion. So I didn't see Dorian as a favorite. At the 1992 Olympia, I was as dry as I was at the Night of Champions, but I was flat. If I had known everything then that I understand now, I would not have allowed this. I was sitting in the sauna at the time, I was expelling excess water, I was on a strict diet until the very end, and I cut back on salt. I was only focused on getting on stage and showing myself at my best. I knew I had a great chance, but after looking at the pictures, I realized that I was flat, but at the same time very prominent. It was my first Olympia. I didn't have a team, I was on my own. The eventual champion was Dorian Yates, a mysterious and stern athlete from Birmingham. Kevin was annoyed, but it said a lot about his prospects. When you're disappointed with the second place at your Olympic debut. Many people call the 90s the peak of bodybuilding development. The best athletes, the crowds of fans, the big money in the industry. The 90s were remembered for the bright personalities on the stage and, of course, the huge number of tournaments where the stars performed. Well, the 6 tournaments in '93 were just a warm-up for Kevin. He was gaining momentum. There was another factor that largely characterized that time: maximum competition on stage. The 5th place at the next Olympia in 1993 was a result of Kevin's youth and fierce competition. Dorian Yates, Flex Wheeler, Sean Ray, and, of course, the subjectivity of the judging competed for the first place that year. But Kevin made the right conclusions, and 1994 was one of the best years of his career. 9 tournaments, 5 wins, including the Arnold Classic, but again the second at the Olympia. Dorian won the 3rd title in a row. 1995. The same situation, Kevin wins tournaments on the European Tour, but at Olympia he's second again for the 3rd time. 1996. Levron will play in 10 tournaments. Starts the season with 3 wins in a row. March 2nd, 1996 Columbus, Arnold Classic Tournament. The 3rd place this year is occupied by the huge Paul Dillett. 2 of the best remain on the stage, Kevin Levrone and Flex Wheeler. And the host announces the name of the athlete who took the second place, and this is Wheeler. Flex does not hide his disappointment. Kevin is restrained in his emotions. Both on stage and especially in interviews after the award ceremony, those 3 victories at the start of the season were united by one fact: Dorian Yates was not at those tournaments. In September 1996, the Olympia was held in Chicago. Dorian performed after a bicep injury, but as always, he was overwhelmed by the massiveness and rigidity of the muscles. They say Shawn Ray could have taken that Olympia. He was in great shape, an amazing, massive aesthete. Nevertheless, Dorian retained the title for Kevin, who then became the third. It was the turning point of the season. After that, he did not win a single stage of the European Tour. 1997 was a special year in Kevin's career, the most successful in terms of the number of tournaments he won. Mr. Olympia 1997. Dorian's body continued to fail. This time, the triceps were barely holding on, yet he was no longer the same as before. At the same time, Nasser El Sonbati was in a special form, and Shawn Ray was incredible again. But they shared the second and third places. Dorian Yates took his 6th consecutive and last victory. Kevin took the 4th place. Once again, impressive shots will remain in history and he will be good at his best poses again, but according to the judges, he is still not ready enough to win. But after Levrone, he rode through European tournaments like an avalanche, 6 wins in a row. Here's another one of Kevin's memories. As for nutrition, I have 68 to 69 tournaments behind me. I have experimented many times, more or less carbohydrates, salt. On long tours of Europe, I had the opportunity to understand what works when traveling in conditions of time difference during flights, when I did not have 10 hours to sleep and training continued, and it could last 2 weeks. So I have a whole encyclopedia in my head with information that I found out myself in practice. In '97, Kevin's winning streak lasted until the Russian Grand Prix, which was won by Ronnie Coleman. Kevin got the silver medal, and that was a bad sign for Kevin. Having lived through the era of competition with one legend, Kevin saw the start and rise of a new star. The San Francisco Pro Tournament in '98 was the last one where Kevin was able to beat Ronnie, and Kevin's penultimate victory in principle. And then it was time for Coleman, and Levron's victories ended, even in Europe. In '98 and '99, Kevin was 4th in a row at the Olympia Other, and yes, fans love winners, but it's not always necessary to take first place for people's love. In those years, Kevin was the people's champion. He was loved for his simplicity, openness, and, of course, for his incredible form on stage. Next quote, "I could only get around Ronnie in one position, even when he was at his peak. I think it's the chest on the side, but everything else he was just on another level. But the opportunity to compete with him fueled my fire even more. But I also knew, and I think everyone also knew, that we weren't fighting for second place." Kevin knew a lot about strength work, about 700 kilograms in the leg press, arm bends with dumbbells under 50 kilos, over 220 kilograms in the bench press, 180 kilograms shoulder press are just some of his strength indicators. Levrone was incredibly strong, and he transformed his power into an impressive form on stage, the 2000 Olympia and Kevin's next runner-up. How many of those second places have already been? And yet it is this Olympia that Kevin distinguishes from everyone. The tournament where I felt the best, healthy, and at the peak of my form was the moment of my glory, the 2000 Olympia. I was full of energy, my electrolyte balance was fine, and I had the right attitude. Everything turned out perfectly. I've never felt this way on stage in my career. Definitely. And even with this combination of factors, it was difficult to compete with Ronnie. Every year he got bigger, more massive, and maintained his condition. I think you just have to train so that you can achieve this level. Unrealistic size and muscle quality. This is impossible to achieve if you just pump with 15 to 20 kilogram dumbbells. He did a crazy job to develop his muscles in such a way that you can't pump your legs with a squat of 150 to 180 kilograms and expect to have the same legs. His attitude was just on another level. And again, Kevin also knew a lot about hard training and huge working weights. Working with free weights and in simulators is a big difference. When you put a barbell on your back and squat with it, every muscle in your body is working to maintain balance. Squatting in the Smith machine is a different story and a different result. Not the same as with a free weight, this is the basis. Balance, effort, momentum, concentration, all together. Next is the 2001 Olympia. Kevin is already the third. The young and ambitious Jay Cutler fully broke into the race. In the same year, Kevin won on the pro stage for the last time. It was the British Grand Prix tournament. In 2002, Kevin came close to the Olympia title for the last time, but he became the second again. He was second after Dorian and then after Ronnie, an athlete with phenomenal genetics who got caught in a time of maximum competition, and he's not the only one. The audience remembered Kevin not only for his form, but also for his free programs, and years later, Levrone revealed an unexpected fact: he had never trained his freaks. I was drinking shot whiskey and Coke backstage in front of them. Just to get in the mood, I always improvised on stage, and yes, I always had problems. Moreover, there were problems with the music because I could never choose the track that I would pose for. I brought 3 records with me. Registration is as usual, but I couldn't choose the track I would pose for. The Olympia of 2003. More than 10 years after his debut, Kevin is no longer in peak condition. He is ranked 6th. Everything pointed to the fact that this would be his last Olympia. During Kevin's absence, the Olympia title passed from Coleman to Jay Cutler, then to Dexter Jackson, again to Cutler, and finally to Phil Heath. In the mid-50s, fans' interest in Olympia began to decline, and Kevin Levron's return became a real sensation. Kevin had a harder time coming back than he had expected at the 2016 Olympics, and I remember it more than others. She's very important to me because I did it all for my fans. That year, Kevin, as usual, quickly gathered shapes from the disassembled state. I remember well how the fans kept saying for a few more months, and he would give Phil Heath a light. Miracles may happen, but not in this case. Kevin scored well in terms of the top, but those former voluminous relief legs after so many years, and taking into account the problematic knees, could not be returned. Kevin did not enter the top 15. He continued his training, reappeared on stage at the Arnold Classic 2018, and finally ended his career. Levrone did what he wanted, but the result was slightly below the heated audience expectations. How will he be remembered? An athlete who finished second 5 times at the Olympic Games. Who could give up training and then get back in shape from scratch in 3 months? As the owner of fantastic hands, as an incredibly powerful athlete, or as one of the most charismatic bodybuilders in history. Kevin himself says, "I want people to remember not to pay attention if someone doubts you. Get over all this and your fears. You have to believe in yourself." That's what I've come to after all these years. Only you determine the route for yourself. If you can't follow in someone else's footsteps, you have to make your own way. And the more time you spend alone with yourself, away from the negativity of others, the clearer your goals will become, the faster you will be able to achieve them. It is not given to a person to control his fate, but we can do everything possible to get closer to the goal. Thanks for watching. Write in the comments what you think about the legend, what stages of his career, and which tournaments you remember most about him. Share the video to help get into the recommendations. If you like, support the project with a like and subscribe to the channel. Sports Guru was with you. See you later.